They never hated you because they misunderstood you. They misunderstood you because hating you felt easier than admitting you outgrew everything they settled for. Now that you're rising, now that your name is floating in rooms they'll never enter, suddenly they don't get you. Suddenly you're different, distant, too much. But where was all that curiosity when they wrote you off? Where was that concern when they laughed behind your back, whispered your downfall like it was already scheduled? Let's be real, they never misunderstood you. They understood you perfectly, and that's what scared them. They saw something in you before you fully did, so they tried to kill it early through silence, sabotage, exclusion, and projection. And now that it didn't work, now that you're successful without their support, glowing without their spotlight, building without their blueprint, they play dumb, they act confused. You've changed. Yes, you evolved. And they're still stuck trying to decode a version of you that doesn't even live here anymore. Let them sit in confusion. They couldn't comprehend you when you were quiet. They won't understand you now that you're loud in results. Let them stay confused. That's the price of underestimating someone who was never asking for permission. The truth? You scare small minds because you stopped trying to be explainable. You stopped shrinking to fit their comfort. You stopped over-explaining your moves to people who only listened to twist them. They called you arrogant when you got confident, called you fake when you got free, but you weren't performing, you were becoming. And now they can't stand the power you walk in, so they pretend they just don't get you. They do. They just can't accept that you outgrew their expectations and left their approval system behind. So if you're done trying to be understood, if you're tired of performing for people who wouldn't clap no matter what you did, then you're in the right place. Like this video, subscribe now, and drop 77 in the comments if you finally realized that their confusion is your confirmation. When you do, you send a signal through this digital world, a signal to every chosen one who's been underestimated, mislabeled, and misunderstood while rising quietly in the background. Because let's be honest, chosen one, they were never supposed to understand you. Your path isn't built to be processed by shallow minds. You didn't come from their system, so of course their rules don't apply. You didn't network your way into your purpose. You survived your way into it. What they call luck is really what happens when pain meets alignment and produces unstoppable clarity. You terrify them because you got better with no applause. You rose with no spotlight. You walked away with no guilt. And now that you're thriving, they want access again, but can't handle your truth. You're not their little secret anymore. You're not the underdog they can feel superior to. You're a full-blown disruption, a walking contradiction to their mediocrity. And every time you say nothing, it screams louder than every excuse they built to justify why they stayed behind. Let them misunderstand you. That's not weakness, that's dominance. You're not just misunderstood, you're miscalculated. And every time they miss, you move further out of reach. Let them choke on your silence. Let them guess. Let them wonder how the same one they tried to break turned out to be the one who never needed their understanding to win. And now, let's pull the curtain back on why your silence is your sharpest weapon. Why being misunderstood isn't your burden, it's your advantage. We're about to break this down piece by piece, and if you're really walking in chosen energy, something in your spirit won't let you click away. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you're done trying to explain yourself to people who never deserved access in the first place. This message isn't for everyone, but if you've made it this far, you already know it's for you. Let's go deeper. The truth hits harder from here on out. Number 1, they shot at shadows, while the real you was reloading. They aimed at what they thought was you. Problem is, what they saw was never real. Now they're bleeding from a war they started with a ghost. Let's get something straight from the jump. The version of you they attacked was never you. It was a projection, a watered-down, dimmed-up, surface-level echo of who you really are. You let them think they had you figured out, because the second they thought they knew you, they let their guard down. And now that the real you is standing in power, they're rattled because they realize they spent all their time studying the wrong target. They misunderstood you, and you let them, not because you were scared, but because their misunderstanding was your protection. Their version of you, that's the decoy you sent out so you could heal in peace, build in silence, evolve in shadow. While they were throwing darts at the cardboard cutout, you were transforming. While they were gossiping, you were aligning. While they were playing politics, you were learning to walk with the universe at your back. Chosen one, this was always the plan. You were never supposed to be understood by them. You're not built for basic comprehension. You're not here to be digestible to people who can't stomach truth. Stop expecting small minds to hold space for your big energy. The reason they never got you is because you weren't made to be got. You were made to disrupt. And disruption doesn't come with subtitles. Let them call you cold, distant, arrogant. Let them call you whatever helps them sleep at night, because while they talk, you're walking into places they swore you didn't belong. You're shaking rooms just by entering. You're winning without a manual, without their approval, without even flinching. And that fact, it crushes them. But here's where I have to check you too. Because too many of you, yes, even you chosen ones, still feel the itch to explain, to justify, to clarify what they've twisted. You scroll through comments wanting to defend your name. You rehearse comebacks to conversations that don't deserve your energy. Let me break that habit right now. Stop giving CPR to narratives that were born from fear, jealousy, and projection. They never saw the real you. They weren't allowed to, and that was protection, not punishment. Because had they known your real power, they would have doubled their attacks. Had they seen your full purpose, they would have panicked sooner. The universe knew they couldn't handle you, so it let them think they had access, while guarding the treasure that is your true identity. That's what being chosen looks like. It's not about being seen, it's about being preserved. And now, you're moving different. Not because you're hiding, but because you're wise. You've outgrown the need to be understood by people who aren't even standing in alignment with their own truth. Why would you explain your mission to someone who doesn't even know their purpose? Why beg clarity from chaos? Why chase understanding from someone whose vision is clouded by ego? You walk like this because you know now. You know that silence isn't weakness, it's warfare. You know that being misunderstood keeps the snakes confused. It keeps the manipulators at bay. It keeps the imitators trying to copy a blueprint they'll never decode. The more they misunderstand you, the more power you keep. That confusion, that's leverage. Let them think you're the villain. Let them whisper your name like it's a curse. Let them build a case out of shadows and silence. Because while they're out there preaching the lie, the universe is preparing a table. And guess who's not invited? Here's the part that burns them most. You didn't need to clear your name to win. You didn't need a campaign to be crowned. You didn't need validation to be valuable. Your success is not tied to being understood. It's tied to alignment. And when you're in alignment, doors open that explanations could never unlock. So if they're still misunderstanding you, good. That means you're still protected. That means they're still locked out of what matters. That means they're still swinging at shadows while the real you is 10 moves ahead. And when they finally realize who you really are, it'll be too late. They'll realize that the version of you they gossiped about, mocked and dismissed was never anything more than a mask, one you let them see, one you outgrew long ago. So let them keep talking, let them stay confused, let them miss every shot because they're aiming at echoes. Your silence is not surrender, it's strategy. Your misunderstanding is not a curse, it's camouflage. And your distance, it's not pride, it's protection, because they thought they had you figured out. But the real you moves like smoke and hits like fire. Number 2, they can't read blueprints that weren't written in their language. They call it strange because it doesn't look like survival the way they define it. You call it alignment. They call it arrogance. You call it peace. And what they don't understand, they try to destroy. Let's make something painfully clear. You were never built for them to understand. So why do you keep breaking your purpose into bite-sized pieces, hoping they'll finally get it? Why do you explain yourself to people who only listen through the filter of fear, jealousy, or control? You are not here to be legible to the same ones who are still speaking the language of ego. You speak alignment, they speak approval. You speak intuition, they speak image. Of course they don't get you, and the moment you try to make yourself understandable to them, you start dimming. You start shrinking. You start playing translator for people who've never even tried to speak truth, let alone live it. Stop doing that. You are not confusing. You're just fluent in a frequency they've never felt. You're not weird. You're walking in instructions they were never given. You were built by different hands, wired with different circuitry. Your soul is tuned to a mission they'll never comprehend because they were never meant to carry it. So naturally, your moves will look irrational to those still glued to approval. You hear internal signals, they need applause. You trust energy, they trust trends. You walk by something that's rooted in timelessness and they're chasing what's popular today. They won't get you. They were never supposed to. Your light makes them flinch because it exposes their shadows. And instead of healing, they project. Instead of learning, they label. Instead of asking, they assume. That's their pattern. And you? You keep wasting energy trying to explain spiritual instructions to people who only understand surface logic. Let me ask you, why do you keep giving them that much access to your soul? You keep expecting people who were raised on performance, pride, and power games to understand a path that requires surrender, silence, and sacred strategy. That's not just unrealistic, it's dangerous. Because in trying to be understood, you start watering down something the universe intended to be disruptive. You weren't sent here to be palatable. You were sent here to shift atmospheres. Your power doesn't exist in their comfort zone. It threatens it. They say, "You've changed." No, you returned to who you were before they programmed you to perform. You broke out of their mold and stepped back into your mission, and now it feels like betrayal to them. But they were never loyal to you, only to the version of you that stayed beneath them. So why are you still trying to carry their understanding like it's a prize? They don't have the depth to see your transformation. That's not your failure. That's their limitation. And if you keep twisting yourself into digestible forms for people who feed on delusion, don't be surprised when your soul starts starving. You owe no one understanding, not when they've proven over and over that they'd rather mislabel you than sit in the discomfort of your truth. You don't owe explanations to people who only listen to argue, who only see what you're not, because seeing what you are would force them to reckon with everything they're not. And chosen one, I'll say it because you need to hear it. Stop being surprised when shallow minds choke on deep souls. They say things like, "Why don't you just get a normal job? Why are you always so intense? Why do you take things so seriously?" Because you're not here to play along, you're here to wake people up. You see patterns they don't. You feel storms before they hit. You sense dishonesty even when it's dressed in love. You don't just see what's happening, you see through it. That's not paranoia, that's spiritual clarity, and it makes people who benefit from confusion feel exposed. You've been walking around feeling broken because they said you're too much. But what if your too much is exactly what was needed to break a generational cycle? What if their misunderstanding is just proof that you're finally operating at full capacity? Let them misjudge you. Let them laugh at your silence, mock your peace, question your steps. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility to clean up. It's their reflection to sit with, and it will eat at them. Because while they dismissed you, you kept moving. While they tried to label you, you were busy rewriting your legacy. Let's stop pretending they didn't see something in you. They did. That's why they tried so hard to shut it down. That's why they fought so dirty, because they recognized your light, even if they couldn't define it, even if they denied it. They saw it. And instead of honoring it, they feared it. That fear turned into rejection. That rejection turned into misunderstanding, and that misunderstanding turned into your freedom. You were never meant to make sense to people who benefit from your silence. You were never meant to be safe for people who only understand control. You were never meant to be gotten by people who only value performance over presence. And when the universe chose you, it didn't check in with them first. So stop acting like their misunderstanding is a signal that you need to explain. It's actually a signal that you're finally walking right. So let them misread your purpose. Let them scoff at your peace. Let them shrink their view of you to fit their comfort zone. Meanwhile, you walk, you rise, you align, you build. You weren't built to be understood. You were built to unsettle the ones who thought they had life figured out. So stop chasing comprehension from people who were never qualified to speak on your journey. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them stay confused. Because when it's all said and done, you'll be living in the blessing they swore you'd never reach, while they sit in the confusion they created all by themselves. Number 3. They thought you were folding, but you were forging weapons in silence. They laughed at your quiet because they thought it meant defeat. But silence is where the chosen sharpen their blades, and now they flinch every time you speak because they know your voice doesn't miss. They called you weak because you didn't react. They saw your silence as submission. They thought your stillness meant you were scared, stuck, or broken. But chosen one, you weren't frozen. You were forging. While they were out there spinning lies, performing for attention, and feeding their egos, you were in the shadows with the universe, letting it recalibrate you for war. Let's be real. They expected you to fold. They pushed buttons, lit fires, twisted stories, waiting for the explosion. But it never came. And that scared them more than any outburst ever could, because silence in a chosen one is not emptiness, it's power under control, it's fire behind glass, it's a sword unsheathed but not yet swung, and they felt it, even if they pretended not to. Your silence was the message, louder than any speech, more surgical than any clapback. You didn't need to scream to be heard because you were being watched. Every time you walked away instead of clapping back, they wondered why. Every time you said nothing while they tried to provoke you, they got more nervous. Because only a fool keeps poking something that never reacts, unless that something is dangerous. They wanted you to prove yourself. You didn't. They wanted you to fight their lies. You didn't. They wanted you to correct the record. You stayed silent and let their lies rot in the open air. That's not weakness. That's warfare. Understand this. Silence is a sacred weapon, and you chose not to waste your truth in places where it would be mocked, not received. Why cast pearls before swine? Why explain gold to people who only know how to steal, not build? You knew what they were doing. You knew the trap. You knew your voice had power, and that's why you held it back. Not because you were afraid to speak, but because you understood the weight of what you could say if you really let loose. But let's check you for a moment, because some of you doubted yourselves in that silence. You thought, maybe I should have said something. You second-guessed your calm. You replayed the moment in your head, thinking maybe you looked weak. Let's correct that. You didn't look weak. You looked dangerous. That's why they're still obsessed. That's why they're still talking. That's why they still don't feel safe. Because when someone doesn't respond, it leaves room for imagination. And what they imagine you could have said terrifies them more than anything you ever would have said out loud. You weren't silent because you were unsure. You were silent because you knew your voice carries consequence. You didn't correct the lie because you understood time would. And it did. And now the same ones who tried to define you are getting quiet because they know what comes next. Silence isn't absence. It's presence with intention. It's power with patience. It's knowing that when the universe moves on your behalf, your enemies will hear the sound of your silence like thunder in their chest. So stop doubting yourself. Stop regretting the moments where you didn't say your piece. Stop thinking you should have clapped back, called them out, or cleared your name. You didn't lose those moments. You owned them, quietly, strategically, completely. Because silence wasn't surrender. It was the strike before the storm. And now that you speak, they finally realize it's too late to cover their ears. Number 4, you weren't sent to be understood. You were sent to be unforgettable. You weren't made to fit in their sentence. You were made to leave them speechless. They keep saying you're hard to read, that you're too complicated, that being around you feels like walking into a storm they didn't dress for. And they're right. You're not meant to be read like a book. They're supposed to feel you like a warning shot. Every time they try to box you, define you, or label you, they get hit in the face with the reality that you outgrow every frame they put you in. You weren't built to be explained. You were built to be witnessed. You're not some neatly packaged product with a how-to manual and a return policy. You're not built for mass understanding. You're a rare code, a custom frequency. You're encrypted intentionally, because if everyone could access you, your value would drop to the level of public opinion. And chosen one, you weren't meant for them to get. You were meant for them to watch. Every attempt they made to simplify you failed. They tried to pin you as too quiet. Then you started commanding rooms with your presence. They called you too sensitive, but it turns out your sensitivity was just discernment in disguise. They labeled you unstable until you showed them what divine recalibration looks like. You are not confusing. They're just shallow. And what's deep will always look off to someone still splashing in the kiddie pool of identity. You've been wasting too much energy trying to make sense to people who've never done the inner work to understand themselves. Stop that. You keep trying to break yourself down into small, understandable pieces so you can be palatable to people who couldn't digest your truth, even if it were spoon-fed. You're not sushi, you're fire. You were never meant to be consumed. You were meant to transform everything you touch. You were sent here as a mirror, and they hated the reflection. That's why they called you too much, too intense, too bold, too real. What they really meant was, you're showing me parts of myself I haven't faced yet. And instead of doing the work, they chose to resent the mirror. Let them struggle with the version of you they think they know, while the real you keeps evolving beyond reach. You're not here to clarify your existence for people who never asked with honesty in the first place. You're not here to slow down your growth, just so they can catch up to the version of you they last saw 5 years ago. Some of you still feel bad when people say, "You've changed." Why? You were supposed to. That's what healing looks like. That's what alignment does. It shifts you. You're not a statue. They're just mad. The pedestal they put you on can't hold who you've become. Stop shrinking into translations. You don't need to be translated. You need to be witnessed. Let your life speak. Let your growth speak. Let your silence speak. Let your success be the footnote to their confusion. You weren't sent here to explain your blueprint. You are the blueprint. And chosen one, while we're here, let's talk about your doubt. You've been questioning yourself lately, haven't you? Wondering if maybe you are too different, maybe too quiet, maybe too intense. Wondering why nobody seems to get you, why you always feel like you're on the outside of things. Let me say this clearly. You're on the outside because you were never supposed to blend in. Your frequency is rare. Your code is sacred. Your presence disrupts patterns people are addicted to. You show up and their masks start slipping. That's why they call you weird. But strange to the system is standard for the chosen. So stand in it. Don't apologize. Don't shrink. Don't explain. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them stare. Let them whisper. That's not your burden. That's the price they pay for trying to box up a force of nature. You're not a concept. You're not a role. You're not a mood. You're a move of the universe itself, and you don't need to be understood to shift everything in the room. So when they ask what you are, say nothing. Because the truth is this: you were never meant to be explained. You were meant to be remembered. Number 5. You let them paint the lie, so you could set it on fire in front of them. They built their reputation off a version of you that never existed, and now your truth is walking through the room like a flamethrower, setting every lie they ever told on fire. They thought they had the upper hand because you stayed quiet, because you didn't interrupt their little gossip circles, because you didn't show up to defend yourself when they told stories that sounded good enough to believe. They mistook your silence for shame. They assumed your distance meant defeat. But what they didn't know was this: you were watching, you were waiting, you were building, and now you're not just exposing the lie, you're burning it down with every move you make. See, they needed the lie to survive. The story they told about you made them look bigger, made them feel relevant. It made them feel in control. They played storyteller, judge, and jury, all in one, spinning versions of your name to fit their fantasy. Why? Because the real you, the powerful, grounded, purpose-driven you, terrified them. So they created a diluted version they could handle. Something broken, something pitiful, something small. But here's where they fumbled. They told those lies too early. Before they saw what the universe was getting ready to do with your life, before they realized you were the kind of soul that doesn't just bounce back. You rise like a problem they can't solve. You didn't correct them because you knew the truth would. You knew that every lie they told would eventually crash into your results. You knew their words had an expiration date, and you let them talk themselves into a corner they'd never escape. That strategy, chosen, won. That's warfare with patience. And it cuts deeper than any rebuttal ever could. Now their words sound hollow. Now their stories are unraveling. Now they've got to watch you win in real time and pretend they're not choking on regret. Every new level you walk in is a funeral for the fiction they built. You didn't have to argue. You just had to evolve. But let's deal with your doubt for a second. Some of you wrestled with the silence. You questioned yourself. You wondered if letting them talk unchecked made you look weak. You wanted to speak up, clap back, drop receipts, clear your name. You rehearsed it in your head 100 times. But deep down, your spirit knew better. It knew the energy it would cost wasn't worth the reward. You didn't correct the lie because you were busy preparing the reality, and the reality hits harder every time it walks through the door. Let me say this plain. They built their identity around misunderstanding you, around thinking they knew you, around acting like they were the authority on your life. But your glow-up is loud, your peace is public, your power is proof. And now their story doesn't match the stage you're standing on. They called you broken, now they look broken just watching you. They said you were finished, now they're explaining to others why you just keep rising. They thought you were done until your name started ringing in rooms they've never been invited into. And you didn't have to say a word, so let them keep talking. Every lie is a countdown. And that clock's been ticking because you didn't stop them from building it. You just waited until the moment was right. And now, with every win, every healed wound, every unbothered step forward, you're lighting the match. And they're standing inside the house of lies they built, watching it go up in flames, knowing you gave them every chance to walk away. So no, you didn't lose by staying silent. You just waited for the perfect time to make truth look like revenge. And now, your results are the fire, and their lies are the fuel. Number 6. They can't cage what refuses to be tamed. The reason they fear you isn't because they don't understand you, it's because they can't track you. And when people can't predict your next move, they panic, because control dies where mystery lives. They don't fear your presence because it's loud. They fear it because it's unreadable. You move like smoke through their systems, unbothered, untraceable, and always 10 steps ahead of their assumptions. They're used to people who fall in line, who repeat cycles, who crumble when the pressure hits. You're the glitch in their pattern, the storm they didn't forecast, the answer they never saw coming. They sat around predicting your failure, setting dates for your downfall, betting on your breakdown like it was a matter of time. They made assumptions, drew maps, built narratives, but what they didn't realize is you don't follow scripts. You don't repeat scenes. You don't move where the noise tells you to move. Your silence, strategic. Your pivot, divine. Your success, a disruption. And that's why they're rattled. You shine where they swore you'd suffocate. You bloom in rooms they thought were airtight against you. They fear you because every time they think they've got you cornered, you walk through a wall that wasn't supposed to open. Every time they think you're finished, you pop up on a higher level, and now they're scrambling to figure out how you did it. Let me break this down. You are unpredictable because you're not led by trends. You're led by purpose. They need attention to move. You only need alignment. They need control to feel safe. You need truth. And when you move like that, on divine timing instead of external validation, you become untouchable. But let's talk about you for a second. Let's talk about that doubt that creeps in, whispering, maybe I'm too all over the place. Maybe I need to pick one path. Maybe they're right. I'm too hard to understand. No, you're not confused. You're complex, and they fear complexity because they've never had to deal with someone who can't be puppeteered by guilt, shame, or fear of rejection. You're not lost. You're just not standing in the open where they can label you. You are not inconsistent. You're adaptive. You shift when the spirit says shift. You disappear when healing calls. You show up when power demands. That's not flakiness. That's spiritual precision. Predictable people are easy to control. You're a wild card in human form. They fear you because they can't pin you down. They can't anticipate your next move. They don't know if you'll show up with thunder or with silence, and both terrify them. This is your advantage. Their fear isn't rooted in your mistakes. It's rooted in their inability to manage you. You won't play their game. You won't jump at their cues. You won't trade truth for peace. And because of that, they fear you like a system fears a hacker. You're not just breaking the rules. They can't even see how you're doing it. And you know what else? Every time they try to study you, they get more confused because you outgrow the last version of yourself before they can weaponize it against you. They don't know which version of you is going to walk in the room, the one who forgives with grace or the one who burns bridges and never looks back. And that unpredictability, it haunts them. You're not meant to be a puppet in their drama. You're the plot twist in their entire storyline. So don't apologize for being unreadable. Don't explain why you disappeared, why you changed directions, why you moved different. That's your power. That's your protection. That's how chosen ones stay unreachable, by staying unpredictable. Let them fear what they can't pin down. Let them watch, wonder, and whisper. Let them brace themselves every time you shift, because deep down they know you're not coming. You're arriving, and when you do, you don't ask for space. You shift the room. Every single time. Number 7. Your silence wasn't surrender. It was the sound of a storm gathering. The most dangerous soul in the room is the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, and doesn't chase. Not because they're weak, but because they already know how the story ends. Let's talk about the moment you chose calm over chaos. When you walked away from the mess they created without saying a word. When they poked you, lied on you, tried to provoke a reaction, and all you gave them was stillness. That silence. That unbothered energy. That wasn't avoidance, that was power. It wasn't numbness, it was preparation. They expected you to explode, to react, to justify. That's the only language they speak. Drama, noise, attention. But you speak authority, and authority never has to raise its voice to make the whole room shift. They hate that you didn't give them a show, that you didn't crumble, that you didn't play the victim or the villain they painted you to be, because people like them need a reaction. It's how they feel powerful. But when you stayed calm, when you didn't flinch, when you didn't clap back, you took all their power away, and that shook them to the core. You know what makes people like that nervous? A person who doesn't need to be seen. They were performing, you were evolving, they were rehearsing comebacks, you were building silence into strategy. They were calling your name out loud, trying to drag you into their circus, and you were too focused on your assignment to even respond. And now that you've emerged, now that your name is rising, now that your peace is unshaken, your glow is undeniable, and your movement is rooted in truth, they're nervous because they realize they missed the real show. They were watching the surface, and the storm was brewing underneath. They were fixated on your silence while the universe was preparing your arrival. Your calm was never weakness, it was certainty. You didn't need validation. You didn't need an audience. You weren't waiting for them to see you. You were waiting to be ready. That quiet season. That's when the real work happened. That's where you shed old layers, upgraded your mind, fortified your spirit. They thought you disappeared, but you were just deep in the cocoon. And now that you've stepped out, you're unrecognizable. And that scares the hell out of them. They're realizing now that your calm wasn't a pause. It was a countdown. You didn't rush. You didn't beg. You didn't explain. You became. So let them be nervous. Let them squirm in the silence they once mocked. Let them fumble with the fact that the version of you they tried to bury has returned as something they can't define or deny. Your calm was a forecast, and now that the storm has hit, they're realizing you weren't quiet because you were weak. You were calm because you were inevitable. Number 8. You found peace where they swore you'd collapse. The most dangerous kind of peace is the one you didn't have to beg for, perform for, or explain. That kind of peace isn't granted, it's seized. And when the chosen one claims it, the whole room feels the shift. They were so sure you'd break without their approval. They thought their rejection would ruin you, that if they stopped clapping, you'd stop rising, that without their applause, you'd shrink into silence. But instead, you went inward. You found a calm so deep it stopped their noise from reaching you. And now they're realizing the truth. Your peace never needed their permission. You didn't get your strength from their compliments. You built it while they whispered about your failure. You didn't discover your worth because someone finally validated you. You found it when nobody showed up. That's what rattles them. That's what makes them uncomfortable. Because in their world, peace is a prize given to the compliant, the agreeable, the easily controlled. But you made peace your weapon. And now your stillness screams louder than their chaos ever could. They said you were nothing. You nodded and kept building. They turned their backs. You turned to purpose. They expected you to beg. You thanked them for leaving. You didn't just survive the rejection, you thrived in it, because chosen ones aren't validated by crowds. They're refined in silence. While they were busy gathering fans, you were busy gathering clarity. While they chased attention, you cultivated alignment. And now they're watching you sit in peace that they can't buy, borrow, or break. Let's be clear, you earned this. Through every closed door, through every fake friend, through every lonely season where you had no one but the universe and your own grit. And in those moments, you made a choice most never will. You stopped chasing being understood and started embodying being unshakable. They thought peace looked like everyone liking you. You proved peace is walking into a room full of people who doubted you and needing nothing from them. They thought power meant being seen. You built yours in the dark, brick by silent brick, while they were too distracted watching their own reflection. And now that you're grounded, now that your inner world is unshakable, they can't figure out how to move you because you no longer need what they were trying to use to control you. Let's check the chosen ones now, because some of you still crave it, still crave the understanding, the recognition, the I see you from people who never even saw themselves. You're chasing peace like it's external, like it's something someone else gives you when they finally get you. Stop that. Peace is not permission. Peace is position. You decide it. You declare it. You stand in it. The moment you stop letting their validation dictate your vibration is the moment you become untouchable. That's why they're shook. That's why they whisper, "You've changed," because peace looks like arrogance to people who've only known performance. And you're done performing. You're done apologizing. You're done shrinking to fit inside rooms that were never designed for your magnitude. So let them call you cold. Let them say you're distant. Let them lie and twist the story to make themselves feel better. Because while they're still addicted to being liked, you've tapped into something deeper, a peace that doesn't move, even when the world tries to shake you. And that kind of peace, that's not the result of being accepted. That's the reward for choosing yourself when no one else did. Number 9. You chose truth over applause, and that made you untouchable. They can't control a soul that doesn't flinch when approval walks out the door, and when you stopped performing, they lost their grip, because the truth doesn't bend, it burns. They had the script ready for you, the costume, the lights, the lines they wanted you to repeat. They needed you to smile on cue, nod when it was safe, shrink yourself into a version that didn't disrupt their fragile little egos. And, for a while, you may have played along, thinking maybe, just maybe, if you were palatable enough, they'd accept you. But you woke up. You realized that their approval was a leash, and your truth didn't come to live in cages. You threw the script down. You tore the costume off. You walked off their stage mid-scene and chose something they'll never have the courage to pick. Freedom over familiarity. Truth over applause. Purpose over performance. And that's what broke them, because they didn't need you to be right. They needed you to be obedient. They needed your silence to keep their illusion intact. Your fake smile was a pillar in their kingdom of control. But when you stopped pretending, their entire house of cards collapsed. You see, control freaks don't fear rebels. They fear the ones who see, the ones who know the game and still refuse to play it. And when you refuse to trade your truth for their approval, you strip their power right out of their hands. But let's talk about the pressure you felt. The temptation to bend, to go back, to smooth things over, because being disliked hits different when you've always been the one to keep the peace. The one to make it work, the one to absorb the tension so everyone else could stay comfortable. Let me be clear, your truth was never the problem. Their comfort with lies was. They wanted the version of you that didn't rattle cages, the version that stayed quiet when disrespected, the version that kept showing up even when it hurt. But when you started living in truth, they called you selfish, difficult, ungrateful. That wasn't a reflection of who you are. That was a scream from people who lost control over who you used to be. They say you changed. You didn't change. You returned to yourself. You chose truth, even when it cost you relationships, jobs, fake peace, and staged approval. And guess what? You gained something they'll never taste in their entire performative lives. Self-respect. You sleep better now, not because it's easy, but because you're no longer betraying yourself for applause. And every time they try to guilt you, manipulate you, or shame you back into the role, you just smile, not out of spite, but because you finally know. You don't need to be liked to be aligned. Chosen ones don't bow to approval. They speak truth and let the room shift. They stop asking, do they still like me? And start asking, did I stay in alignment? So let them be mad. Let them sulk in the absence of your obedience. Let them feel the sting of a soul that no longer fears rejection. You didn't lose their approval. You broke their illusion. And in return, you gained your freedom. Number 10. Let them chatter. You're too busy making history. Legends aren't understood when they rise. They're misunderstood, mocked, dismissed, until the same mouths that doubted them are forced to whisper their names with respect. Let them misunderstand you. Let them analyze your silence like it's weakness. Let them debate your decisions like you owe them clarity. Because while they're sitting in circles talking, you're moving mountains in silence. While they argue over your motives, you're laying foundations they'll one day stand on and pretend they always supported. Here's the truth they can't face. You were never meant to fit inside their story. You were sent to rewrite it. So no, they don't get you. And no, they probably never will, but that was the point. You weren't created to be liked. You were created to leave legacy. You weren't built for applause. You were built for impact. And impact doesn't always come with understanding. Sometimes it comes with isolation, misjudgment, and being the villain in stories you never asked to be in. Let them build their version of you. Let them fill in the gaps with gossip and guesswork. because when the dust settles and your work speaks louder than their words ever could, the silence will tell the truth they couldn't see. You're not chasing a seat at their table, you're building your own kingdom. So keep going, keep rising, keep being misunderstood, because legends aren't understood in real time. They're studied after the world realizes they were witnessing history in motion. And now, chosen one, you see the truth for what it is. Your power was never meant to be understood, only felt. Let them misunderstand you, mislabel you, misjudge you. It changes nothing. You're not here to be accepted. You're here to shift timelines. Walk in that, own it, and let your silence echo louder than their noise ever could. If this message spoke to your spirit, like this video, subscribe and drop the number 77 in the comments to let the universe know you're locked in. Share this with another chosen one. It's time we all remembered what we're really made of.